Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a DFS review for the 2021 Wells Fargo Championship where Rory McIlroy is your winner. Hopefully you followed me on the preview and strategy video because I talked a lot about Rory. Rory was one of my favorite plays. During the strategy video, I actually went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to lock him in as an anchor play. I ended up choosing locking him in to being an anchor play. So it was great for me on that aspect. The strategy I deployed this week was not great. I had only two lineups that had 6 of 6 making it through the cut. So when you play 100 different lineups, that's not very good. And a lot of it had to do with kind of me just picking random 6K golfers. So I'm not going to get too far into that. That'll be a little bit later in the video. Just want to let you know, although I did anchor around Rory, I didn't do the greatest on DFS. So that's how it goes sometimes. But hopefully you did follow me on the Rory pick. But before we actually get any further into this, I want to remind you guys there are timestamps in the description below. Those timestamps can also be found on YouTube's progress bar. So if you're on desktop, all you have to do is hover over that progress bar. You will see timestamps there. On mobile, what you'll have to do is click and drag the little knob on the progress bar up and down to see the timestamps that way, but they're at your disposal. You can skip to whatever part of the video you're interested in. They're there for you guys. So with that being said, let me just pull up the spreadsheet. This is the results page. We'll talk about this soon. Just a quick overview. We're going to start here, and then we're going to go to the $1 GPP versus, or the winning GPP lineup versus the optimal lineup, and then go into the bucket system, and then come back because I want you guys to know, was there actually availability to create a lineup following the bucket system rules that fit under the salary and still beat the $1 GPP? Was it any close to the optimal lineup? Those are things I want to show you guys in this video, so that's what I'm going to do. But we're going to start here with the results page, just giving you kind of the top 10 golfers here. So Rory on down to Aaron Wise. Again, we're only going to review the top 10 throughout this video, so you can see what they are. You can also see who the golfers are below it, but I'm not going to talk about those guys. Rory wins it. Abram Ancer finishes second, and then it's Victor Hovland and Keith Mitchell that tied for third. This marks Victor Hovland's second week in a row finishing top 5, which is pretty remarkable. And it actually might be better than that. I just only remember this last week, him finishing top 5. But the kid is good. I know you guys probably already knew that, but going forward, I don't know. I don't know if there's a golf course that doesn't fit his game. He's just on top of it. Played really well. Gary Woodland might be a little bit of a surprise. Now, he was in the lead a bunch of times throughout this weekend, but unfortunately wavered at the end, but still finished 5th. That's his best finish in a very, very long time. Matt Wallace is up there. He's a pretty decent Englishman. If you've never heard of him, that's probably why. Very solid golfer, and no surprise to see him inside the top 10. I probably didn't see him here. I don't think I really talked about him much in the strategy or the preview video, but he's still a very good talent. So Matt Wallace, not a bad play. We talked about Patrick Reed and how much we liked Reed. Luke List is up there. Luke List is a very talented golfer. He's been very talented for a very long time, but he is one of those guys that cannot make a 4-foot putt to save his life. And it's really difficult to close out a tournament if you can't make those putts. And I believe on Sunday, he had a few putts where he could have drained, but lipped out. And it's surprising. To me, it's really weird that you can be a pro for that long and not figure out how to putt. I mean, maybe that's unfair for me to say. I've been a pretty decent putter my whole life. But it's just weird that you can't work on it to get better at it. He's a phenomenal ball striker, very good driver of the golf ball, but can't putt to save his life. Then we have Bryson DeChambeau and Aaron Wise to round out the top 10. DeChambeau was kind of a surprise to me. He actually flew home on Friday thinking he missed the cut, but I'll get to this with the whole tee time splits. The PM wave on Friday struggled in the wind, and the cut dropped from +1 to +3. It allowed, or +1 to +2. It allowed Bryson to make the cut because he was at +2. So he had to fly back. and obviously finished inside the top 10. So all this does is help his stats. A top 10 finish, and who knows what kind of strokes gained stats that he actually gained, but he played well on the weekend. Rightfully so. He finished top 10. And Aaron Wise, that's pretty surprising, but I do believe I talked a little bit about him, and I probably just like disregarded him. Kind of was like, yeah, he's a decent play, but I don't think I'm going to do it. But that's your top 10. Let's go ahead and get into the optimal lineup versus the GPP winning lineup. The GPP winning lineup are the golfers here highlighted in blue. So we have Rory McIlroy, Abraham Ancer, Victor Hovland, Luke List, and you can see nobody else inside the top 10. Just 4 golfers inside the top 10. We have to scroll down a little bit to find the other 2. Cameron Davis and Lanto Griffin. So those 6 golfers round out the the GPP winning lineup. That winning lineup scored 507.5 points, and it used up all $50,000 of the salary. That's no surprise. We see this week in and week out, a GPP winning lineup using all $50,000 to win the tournament, to win the contest. I always say when we talk about optimal lineups versus realistic optimal lineups, which I'm going to do also here, I say get as close to 50,000 as you possibly can. It limits the amount of combinations you can put together for a lineup, and it also saves you a headache trying to figure out how much money you should leave on the table. $50,000 wins again. I should actually create a tally to see how many times $50,000 wins a GPP winning lineup. That way, for all those people out there on the industry saying, if you want to differentiate your lineup, just leave $200, whatever difference. Well, I'm here to tell you, I've done this enough. I know $50,000 wins GPPs more often than any other salary. Using up that much salary. So definitely don't worry too much about it. Because if you want to win a GPP winning lineup, or if you want to win a GPP, there are things you just have to disregard. Who cares about how much someone's owned? Who cares? The GPP winning lineup, it doesn't matter. The optimal lineup, it doesn't matter how much someone's owned. It's the optimal lineup. It's the winning lineup, so $50,000. Now, the optimal lineup scored 554.5 points, so there was a 47-point differential between those two, and it used up 49,400. Now, if you were with me in the strategy video, all of my lineups I made sure were over 49,000. The ones that I kind of toyed around with. Again, for me, I'm just trying to create that realistic lineup. Let's go ahead and talk about those golfers that made up the optimal lineup. It was Rory McIlroy, Abraham Ancer, Keith Mitchell, Victor Hovland, Gary Woodland, and Scott Piercy. Again, that equaled 49,400, but a more realistic lineup, getting all 6-year golfers in, would have been those first 5 I named: McIlroy, Ancer, Mitchell, Hovland, Woodland, and then we would go with Luke List at 6,800. If we go ahead and add all those up, that equals $50,000 on the button. That's obviously easy. Luke List is $600 more than Scott Piercy, and that's 600 on that. That's 50,000. So this is more of your realistic lineup. And if you look at the difference between Luke List and Scott Piercy, it's 1.5 points. So you'd have been 1.5 points off of the optimal lineup, but you still would have taken down a GPP. And I bring this up because this was the first week that I kind of deployed a strategy of, actually, no. I made the realization after submitting my lineups. I talked with somebody on Twitter about this, where I don't think I'm ever going to dip below 6,500 again. I mean, I might, in a percentage of lineups, maybe 10% of my lineups, I'll put someone lower than 6,500. It might even be less than that. It could be 5%. But there's really no point in trying to throw a dart at anyone below 6,500 when a guy 6,500 and above can do the trick. Like Luke List, not in the optimal lineup, but we would have taken down a GPP. So this is your realistic lineup, and that's the lineup that I would want to go with. And it used, again, $50,000. So I think it would have been pretty simple. We're going to have to take a look to see what the how the bucket system did in all, just to see if we can actually create this type of lineup with the bucket system. So let's go ahead. Let's look at that summary page. here with the bucket system. I'm going to go ahead, put a filter on this, get rid of the last year's, which I believe it already did. Perfect. And we are actually going to talk about this as we did in the strategy video. So I'm going to pick out the best bucket and see how well that did. So course history 1. Oh, no. I'm sorry. Course history 2. That was the number 1 bucket that I wanted to choose from. It had a 26.67% success rate, a minimum of 1. That means every single year that I've been keeping track of this, it has at least had 1. The top 10, the top 10 of each of these tournaments leaderboard finished inside the top 10. So we've seen it. Here's a different way to say it. I'm sorry. We've seen this at least once every single year dating back to 2015. That a golfer from this bucket finished inside the top 10 there. That was a better way to do it. So if we go ahead, go to the 2021 DK page and take a look, we're looking at course history 2s. So I find my course history, bucket, you can already see our winner comes from this bucket. But if we go ahead and sort this, here are all the golfers in this bucket. We actually had 2 finish inside the top 10. Rory McIlroy wins this tournament. Aaron Wise finished 9th. And then you can see some of these other guys. Mickelson was doing well, was the first round leader, was in the top 5 or 10 after Friday's round, and then obviously played pretty poorly on the weekend. But here are your other golfers that are in this bucket. The very first bucket I talked about in the strategy video, I was like, Rory McIlroy, boom, lock him in. I want Rory McIlroy on my lineup. This is a really good reason to do it. It's between him and the rest of these guys in this bucket, and there were 9 other golfers. I just felt way more comfortable playing Rory than anyone else here. I ended up playing him in 27% of my lineups, which was the highest ownership that I did. So this ended up working out. And just to give you another idea, I also added this. If you remember in the strategy video, here's the columns. So if you just take a look at the column headers here, I have CH2, CH1, RF4, RF2, RF1. I'll talk about those and I'll show you. Well, we'll see if we can find a golfer in each one of these to be either in the optimal lineup or inside the top 10. So we'll go ahead and take a look. But here is your course history 2 bucket. It's all the golfers I just talked about. Rory McIlroy, Jason Day. Well, I didn't really talk about Jason Day, but you can see they're all right here. So if we go to the next bucket, what was the next successful bucket? And I'm really just looking at the success rate here. It would be recent form 4s. So if we go ahead and take a look, we go back here, remove this filter and put in recent form 4 under here, just looking at all the recent form 4s, we had 11 total golfers. Here are all the golfers. We have 2nd and 3rd place, both optimal lineup guys. Abram Answer, Victor Hovland. So check mark for that bucket. Again, how this reads, 21.43% success rate. That's of all golfers that fell under this bucket over the last 6 years. How many of them finished inside the top 10? 21% clip. So that's pretty good. But to make things even better, we've seen a minimum of 1. So we've seen at least once a golfer from this bucket finish inside the top 10 dating back to 2015. We've seen a max of 2. Well, the tradition continues forward. We have 2 golfers, so we've never seen more than 2, but we have at least 1. Obviously, that makes sense, right? With Abram Answer and Victor Hovland. Now, if there was a golfer that I liked the most in here, it was Justin Thomas. He was my number 1 ranked golfer in the field, but, 2 guys, 1 in the 9K, 1 in the 8K. So if you're also keeping track at home, I usually go with that general lineup philosophy of a 10K, a 9, an 8, 2 7s, and a 6. Well, here you go. We already have our 10 in Rory McIlroy. We have a 9 in Victor Hovland and an 8K golfer in Abram Answer. It all works out. It falls under that logic. So moving on from there, what was our next bucket that I was looking at? I guess off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I know we were looking at course history 1s and recent form 2. So let's just go recent form 2. That was the next highest success rate that we see. 13.22%. There were 22 golfers in this bucket this year. We usually see 20 on average. And again, we have a minimum of 1 and a max of 5. So when we take a look, at, I already lost, recent form 2s. So we'll go ahead and get rid of the 4s and put down the 2s. Do we have anybody else? Look at that. Keith Mitchell inside the optimal lineup. So our first bucket we looked at, check. Second bucket we looked at, check. Third bucket we're looking at right now, check. A golfer inside the optimal lineup. Keith Mitchell. If I were to sort this by salary, Finau was in here. And if you remember, I talked a lot about Finau. I paired him up with Rory in 10 lineups, 10 out of 100 lineups. So it didn't really hurt me all that much, but it's surprising that Tony didn't make the cut. And really, maybe it's not surprising. He was in that AM PM wave. So it was definitely harder for him on Friday. But yeah, that was very surprising for this not to hit. And again, I think a lot of it had to do with the weather. But yeah, him and Joaquin Niemann, those are two guys that I anchored my lineups around. It was Finau with Rory, and it was Niemann with Justin Thomas. So obviously that Niemann JT lineup didn't do the greatest, but again, as we look, we sorted by position. Keith Mitchell was a good 7K golfer to choose. So again, if you're keeping track at home, that's a 10, a 9, an 8, and now 1-7. 1-7 from the buckets we looked at. And we haven't missed a beat yet. So the next bucket that we looked at was the next highest success rate, and that was course history 1s. So let's go ahead, remove the filter from here. Let's take a look at course history 1s just to see what that looked like. We can already see Keith Mitchell's going to be up there. But yeah, so Keith Mitchell falls under both of those buckets, recent form bucket 2 and a course history bucket 1. Did well, but we also see Patrick Reed up there. And Patrick Reed was another golfer that I liked. In all reality, I think I could have replaced him with Victor Hovland and would have been just fine. Actually, I want to see what that would look like. So a better way to do this is just looking here. Patrick Reed scored 75 points. Victor Hovland scored 90. So there's a 15-point difference. We could have created a lineup with Patrick Reed and still taking down the GPV winning lineup. So there's that. That was definitely a possibility. But again, we hit with this bucket. So that's another check. That's 4 checks in a row. The 4 buckets that I brought up, at least 4 of the 5, have those check marks. The last bucket that I talked about, what one was it? I'm going to have to go to here. Recent form 1s. Did we talk about them? No, we did not. So we talked about recent form 4s. Recent form 1s were the next one that I want to look at. And this bucket was pretty large. It was very volume driven. So that's kind of a reason. I guess it wasn't that big of a deal to me. But recent form 1s, let's take a look here. Actually, I'm going to retract what I just said. The reason that it's not that big of a deal to me if someone finished inside this, inside the top 10 is because this bucket was so large. There's 47 golfers in this bucket. But you can see Gary Woodland was in the optimal lineup, but Patrick Reed is right behind him. There's another reason I like Patrick Reed. So easily could have played Patrick Reed instead of Victor Hovland, but I mean, it's not that big of a deal. We would have needed Gary Woodland for the optimal lineup. I don't think we could skip Gary Woodland out of this bucket and still, actually we could have, never mind. We just would have to find somebody else. But either way, this bucket, a bunch of top 10s. There are 4 that finish inside the top 10. That's just going to increase this bucket success rate. It's also going to just carry on that minimum of 1. But you can see some of these guys here. Ricky Fowler was in this group. So was Sung Jae. Very surprising that they missed the cut. But yeah, this bucket was pretty decent. So that's check mark number 5. 5 for 5 in selecting, the buckets that we wanted to choose golfers from. Now, all those other buckets except for this one had a limited amount of golfers in it. I mean, they all do, but they were very easy to choose golfers from. Trying to come up with the best combination of golfers wouldn't have been really that hard. If we would have stuck with the rules and say, that very first bucket that I talked about, course history bucket 2s, the one that Rory McIlroy is in, we're choosing between 9 golfers, and I'm saying pick one. Pick one golfer out of this and build your lineups around. If you were to do that looking at this group, if I went from salary high to low, I'm not a huge fan of Jason Day right now. I mean, well, I'll just say for right now. I did like Jason Day in his younger years, but right now I can't trust how he's playing. Like, I know Rory McIlroy's been kind of on this roller coaster of success and not, but when you think of the two golfers who both held number one positions in the world, Jason Day is a shell of himself. Like, I'm not even sure if he really cares that much about golf anymore. He has his back issues. I don't know how much of that is due to working out. He's obviously gained a lot of weight. I should say a lot, but he's gained weight. We can see it. We can tell. I don't know if that's just part of, maybe not working out as much. Maybe COVID is being an issue, but he's just not the same guy. I would never play him at $8,600. I shouldn't say never. I won't play him at $8,600 until I see 2 top 10 finishes within a 2-month span. Outside of that, I'm not touching Jason Day at $8,600. If he was $7,800 or less, yeah, I would definitely consider playing him. But $8,600, no, not at all. The rest of the guys we see here, I really like Taylor Gooch this week, so I could have easily played him. But if we were like 100% of our lineups, let's say we're making 100 lineups, and we're choosing between all these guys, I'm thinking I'm playing Rory, and I should have done this, but I didn't. I'm probably playing Rory in 40 lineups. Probably playing him in 40. Probably playing Taylor Gooch in 20. So that's 60 lineups taken care of. And of these other guys, I have 6 more for 40 lineups. I'm probably cutting that perfectly in half. So I'm giving them all 6 lineups each, most likely. And then sprinkling in 7, like with Mickelson and Wise. But had I done this, just went 100% on this bucket, which I didn't do. I did. I am so sorry. I certainly did, because if I go ahead and pull up the optimizer, I know I didn't have this ready, but I will definitely talk about it. I put these as my minimum conditions. Like, they were conditionals that I made sure to play. If I scroll in and take a look at my conditionals here, so the minimum, that means I'm making sure the optimizer is selecting guys from this range. Course history 2 was one of the conditionals. What I ended up having to do, I have this whole elaborate ownership model. I had to actually bump it up for Taylor Gooch, if I can find him. So you can see I owned him in 27% of lineups because I couldn't, with the ownerships that I had set. I have this elaborate ownership thing, and I'll show you it sometime, but I'm still trying to iron out the wrinkles. I couldn't make lineups. It kept erroring out. It would not allow me to make 100 lineups unless I bumped some of these guys' ownerships up. But in all honesty, it should have been Rory. I should have just upped Rory's, but I was kind of chicken. I mean, I played him in 27% of my lineups. Like, what you see in this column is the ownership that I played all these guys at. I don't mind showing you this. And these were my anchor spots. Unfortunately, Webb didn't play, so he withdrew. That was another story I forgot to mention. I lost out on 23% of my lineups. And there were a lot of Webb-Rory lineups. So, I missed out on that, and that's probably why I had some of those lineups not make 6-6 through, is because Webb withdrew. But you can see who I paired up. I put JT with Neiman. I put Webb with Patrick Reed. And I put Rory with Finau. How about this? If I switch out Rory and Finau, and I put Rory with Reed, and then I put Webb with Finau, I don't care about my Webb Finau lineups, right? Because if one of them misses, if one of them withdraws, who cares if that other guy misses the cut? So I missed out. Like, this was a bummer. I did think about putting Reed and McIlroy together. I think I'd put them in a couple lineups, but if I would have just went with this, 30% of my lineups, we probably would be sitting pretty good right now. But yeah, you can see my ownerships that I have here. But yeah, again, 100%. If I would have just, and I did stick with 100%, but I obviously bumped up Gooch's ownership more so than I did McIlroy's. But either way, I'll get off of that subject. It's just interesting to bring up. So yeah, all of the buckets, all the ones that I went with, all worked out exactly how I thought they might. Outside of that, we look at salaries, we look at strokes gained. Finding a 10K golfer was a must. So again, I look at the success rate, I look at the minimum. Same goes with 8, and same goes with 7, and same goes with 6.5. So did all of these finish, as they show? Did the minimums end up working out the way that they show right now? So I have not updated this for this tournament, for the results of the 2021 tournament. But you can see 1 10K, 1 8K, 2 7s, and a 6, all finishing inside the top 10. If I get rid of these filters and take a look, we're looking at a 10K, boom, check. 8K, check. 2 7s, check. And a 6.5 and above, check. So the salaries also worked out. Now the strokes gain is only going off of 1 year, so I'm not even going to talk about this. You can see what the minimums are. I will tell you this, strokes gained 2 did not show up inside the top 10. Here are your strokes gained stats. And again, we're looking from Aaron Wise up. So basically from here on up. We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strokes gained bucket 1 golfers. 1, 2, 3 strokes gained bucket 3 golfers. Those 2 buckets that I just crossed off there, 1 and 3, all have positive off the tee stats. So if you want to make an argument saying that this is a golf course where it matters to hit, either be a bomber off the tee or find a bunch of fairways in order to have a positive strokes gained off the tee stat, this would be it. It's definitely showing you, because strokes gained bucket 4 is it's negative off the tee, positive putting. Strokes gained bucket 5 is negative off the tee, negative putting. So we only see 2 of those guys inside the top 10, but everyone else is a 1 or a 3. The first strokes gained bucket 2 guy that we see is Streelman down here in 26. Then we have Gooch, and we have Cameron Davis. So let's see. Did I actually have that set up on my... No, I didn't. On the optimizer. So yeah, strokes gained bucket 2, unfortunately, did not perform the way we wanted. But when there are that many 1s up here, that's good enough. There are 5 strokes gained bucket 1 golfers inside the top 10. I'm okay with allowing, excusing the strokes gained bucket 2s from not showing inside the top 10. So yeah, all in all, buckets all hit. I mean, I don't talk about the strokes gained buckets. I'm not going to. I only have 1 year of data for this, and it's not enough. We can't just look at 1 year and say, yep, we got to look at this, this, and this. Even with salaries, I only have 2 years of data for salaries. This is also questionable. We really don't have to go by this, but usually week in and week out, we see a 10, we see a 9, we see an 8, we see 2 7s, and we see a 6. So it was basically following that logic. It all worked out for me as well. So bucket system, 100% successful. Again, I'm not including strokes gained stats. Not enough tournaments. When we only have 1, not all that well to go off of. But looking at last week, looking at course history, looking at recent form, it all hit 100%. Now, can we create a lineup following that same logic? An easy way to do this is how I had it before. So I'm going to clear this out right here. These were kind of my lineups that I ended up kind of doing as an experiment, basically. So I'm going to clear this out, and we want to select golfers from these buckets. So I think right away we're going with Rory. He's our 10K golfer. Our next, here, how about this? Let me go ahead. No, I'm going to keep it like this. I was going to clear everything out and then just highlight the ones that we want to choose. But how about this? We'll look at the top 10 here, and I will highlight the ones that we see. So McIlroy, Answer, Hovland. Let's go ahead and highlight all the ones that we see that. Where is Answer and where is Hovland? Victor Hovland. I'm just going to make this red. Sure. McIlroy can be red as well. We are looking at Abram Answer. Who else finished inside the top 10? Keith Mitchell, Gary Woodland, Patrick Reed. So Patrick Reed can be red again or as well. We'll reset that. Keith Mitchell right here. I really need to put this over off to another side. Yeah, let me do this. I'm gonna highlight it over here. Oh, actually, I'll keep it here and bring this over here and highlight as I see. So Gary Woodland, where are you, pal? There we go, Gary Woodland. Matt Wallace. Do we see Matt Wallace on here at all? We do. Wow. So right away, what I can tell you is all of our groups have golfers that are highlighted in them. So there's really no reason to go further from this. We're going to go ahead and go this way. So obviously, Victor Hovland, we can choose. We can also choose Abram Ancer. I'll go ahead and put Rory here. Keith Mitchell, he fits in both of these here. And then Gary Woodland, probably want him. Now we have $6,800 left. Do we have a $6,800 golfer that fits in any of this? I don't think so. So maybe instead we go with like a Matt Wallace instead of Abram Ancer. How about we put Matt Wallace here and put Patrick Reed here? Oh, we can't do it that way. Does not fit. Let's see if I can find somebody who is $6,800 that fits in here or less. Actually, no. All we have to work with is Luke List at 68. Oh, I have someone missing from my top 10 here. What for? I hate having filters on and not knowing where the filters went. Where's my $6,200? Scott Piercy. Oh, he was 11th. He was in 11th place. That's why. So Luke List is our only guy. Is Luke List on this at all? So a strokes gained bucket 3, course history 3, recent form 3. No, he was not in any of the ones that we went with. But, you know, we have one golfer from here. We have one golfer from here. Well, two from there. One from here and one from here. So yeah, we can go ahead and put Luke List in there. Kind of cheating, but it still works. It still follows all the bucket combinations that we need. If I were to actually try to plead my case here, when we look at all of Luke List's buckets, he is a last week bucket 1. He's a recent form bucket 3. If we go here, last week bucket 1 golfers, there is a minimum of 1, so we would want to choose a golfer from here. The only cop out here is there are 60 golfers in the field this week that fell under that bucket. On average, we see 48. So you're really trying to find a needle in the haystack. If we look at recent form 3 golfers, though, we see a minimum of 2. Actually, I don't know. Did we actually see a minimum of 2 this week? We did. We had a bunch. Woodland, Luke List, Bryson. So maybe that should have been on the list as well, selecting golfers from there. So making a full lineup of 6 golfers following the bucket system logic gets us to that lineup that was 1.5 points off of the optimal lineup, which is our realistic optimal lineup. So it was doable this week had we followed the buckets. Now, if you think about it, of all the combinations you can create out of these buckets, you have to first take a golfer from one of these, multiply it by every golfer here, multiply it by every golfer here, so on and so forth through. So there are thousands of combinations that we can do with just the limited amount of golfers that I'm showing on the screen right now. But the way that I like doing this with the bucket system is, I'm telling you, we start here. 9 golfers, select 1 to anchor your lineups around. Go to the next bucket. There are only 16 in this bucket. Select 1. Go to the next one. There are 12. And usually it's a little bit easier to pick golfers from some of these buckets because, like Justin Suh for this recent form bucket 4, he was $6,100. Is he really someone we want to anchor our lineups around? And if I were to go ahead and take a look at all these buckets again, going in course history 2, If we take a look at the golfers who missed the cut, now Jason Day wasn't on my radar, but we have a $7,500 Molinari and a $6,900 Redmond. We know those guys weren't, they weren't playing the greatest. Everyone above him, though, a little bit easier to stomach. I liked Rory. I didn't trust Wise. I talked low on Damon because of his Bermuda stats, but I liked Gooch. And Seamus Power wasn't a terrible pick. Neither was Phil, although Phil finished 69th place. These weren't bad picks. Was it Course History 1 was our next bucket? I think so. Right? Yep. And then there were 16 golfers in this bucket. Sorry, 17 golfers in this bucket. And we had to choose one. If we were going top to bottom, this might be a little bit more tricky because obviously JT is there. So is Finau, Reed. And we really only had 3 golfers that finished top 20, and 2 of them finished top 10. How did it actually shake out? We had 7 golfers that missed the cut, and then 7 golfers finished inside top 40. We're really just looking at top 10, top 20, so not a lot, but still, there were golfers you could choose from that were pretty simple. Austin Cook, $6,100. You can basically cross them off. Why would we want to select somebody that was 61? Vaughn Taylor, sure. Jason Duffner, yeah. These weren't golfers on my radar. A lot of it had to do with, price tag and just how well they've been doing. Everyone else, over 7,000 and decent plays, like not difficult to get to. So yeah, I'm not going to go throughout all of them, but you can see kind of the what I'm getting at. So if you want to go back in the video and take a look, pause it and stuff like that, you can find that same logic that applies there as well. Moving on from there, let's talk about the tee times. When we take a look at tee time pairings, I'm going to go ahead and hide this column just to make room. Everybody here inside the top 10. Here's the big thing to look at. So we're going to be looking at Aaron Wise and up. Look at how many PM golfers are there versus how many AM golfers there are. I'm going to go ahead and select all of the AM golfers that are inside the top 10. There are only 3. And that means they had a Thursday AM tee time and a Friday PM tee time. Friday was difficult. There was a 2-stroke difference for both days, Thursday and Friday combined, where the Thursday PM, Friday AM golfers had a 2-stroke advantage over the Thursday AM, Friday PM guys. And obviously you can see there were only 3 golfers inside the top 10 that had AM tee times. And I guess if we were to look at top 20, that extends even further down here. So when we take a look at everybody else, let me just go ahead and highlight all of these. Scroll up, and let me just go ahead and just highlight all the AM guys. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7 golfers out of 25 had that Thursday AM, Friday PM tee times. That says a lot. Like, this tournament was definitely shaped by how the wind was playing on Friday. It was much more difficult on Friday than Friday afternoon than it was any of the other times, Thursday or Friday. Friday morning, it was still tough for them, but not as tough as that afternoon got. So this is one of those times where, selecting a golfer from a wave might be beneficial. Like, if you did choose a wave, you wouldn't have gotten close to the optimal lineup if you would have just faded one of the tee time stacks, because you did need Abermancer and you did need Victor Hovland in order to get to the optimal lineup, as well as the realistic optimal lineup. But let's see this. Let's just actually take a look. If you were to fade, could you have won a GPP? So Rory would be 1, Keith Mitchell, Gary Woodland, Patrick Reed, Matt Wallace. That's 5 golfers. And I guess Luke List, yeah. 520 points. That would have won. That would have clipped it by 507 was the $1 GPP winning lineup. So it would have clipped it by 13 points. Now, actually, can we create a yeah, we can. We would be leaving a lot of money on the table, though. 48,100 is how much you would have used selecting these 6 golfers. So you'd have left $1,900 on the table. That's not happening. And outside of this, I just don't see you winning a GPP. I can't do that. And you can't do that. So, yeah, we're not winning a GPP unless we're doing something like this. Actually, we can do this. Would this work? So PM, all 6 PMs, 519. So yes, you can win. And now you can still beat the GPP winning lineup by selecting all the golfers in one wave. So if you were to select the PM AM, that would have worked. So there was that. Let's go ahead and move on to the last piece I want to talk about. And that's going up and down each one of the stats and looking at the top 20 golfers of each stat in this field and seeing how well they did, just to give you an idea of if there's a certain stat you should have selected over another. Again, it might be a little unfair since, you know, the PMAM stack was definitely a huge contributor. Weather played a huge factor. So maybe it's not fair, but we're going to go ahead and look at it anyways. Freeze up to this column. That way we can see what the result is. We scroll over. The first thing we're looking at are Bermuda splits. So this is the overall average finishing position at Bermuda golf courses, top to bottom for the golfers in the field. Rory was your number 1 guy. He ended up winning this tournament. But then it was Patrick Cantlay who missed the cut. JT finished 22nd, not good for his price tag. And Jon Rahm, 29.37, he missed the cut. Overall, though, it was pretty even split between those that finished inside the top 10/top 20 and those that missed the cut. But I guarantee you some of these guys would be that AM to PM split, right? Oh my God. Everyone who missed the cut with these Bermuda splits had that AM PM stack. So this might be really tricky to kind of go over. How about the never mind. So yeah, that might be difficult to do to get it like even a fair assessment. One thing also to look at are top 10 Bermuda percentages. I feel like this is still going to be AM PM. I might just skip. Here's what I will actually talk about. I always avoid golfers who have less than 5% top 10 Bermuda percentage. So as I scroll down, this is their success rate finishing inside the top 10 at Bermuda events. We see a bunch of 0%. Don't have any top 10s. Scrolling down, still don't have any top 10s. Joel Damon finished 18th. Satoshi Kodaira finished 11th. We still don't have any top 10s. So 5% and lower. That still worked out for me. Although Kodaira and Joel Damon, you could say, you know, that would have fit to win a GPP, but we're trying to find everyone inside the top 10. So that didn't work out. And as I scroll down here, looking at this, it isn't until we get to 7% where we find our first top 10. And I did in the very beginning, when I was doing all of these videos, like in the strategy video, I started at 7%. But then I started seeing more golfers finishing inside the top 10 that were like in the 6% range and the 5% range. So I stuck with 5. But yeah, 7%. That was pretty good. Another one to look at, Bermuda stats this year. Do we see AM, PM splits? Sorry, I hit the wrong tab. AM. Michael Thompson was a PM golfer. Danny McCarthy was an AM. So yeah, probably not a fair shakedown here either. Which kind of goes, I think if I go with the rest of these stats, we're going to see the same stuff, I'm guessing. Tee to green looks pretty good. We already know Jon Rahm and Tony Finau were in the AM group. Was Will Zalatoris? No, he was not. So I don't know what happened with Will. Cantlay, Varner. No, just Cantlay. Cantlay was in the AM PM. So yeah, well, I guess, I don't know. I still don't think it's a fair assessment to look at these stats. Here are your off the tee stats. We see a bunch of guys inside the top 10, more so than we do missed cuts. So that was a good stat to go by. Approach, we have probably more missed cuts, it looks like. Around the green, definitely more missed cuts. And putting stats, more missed cuts. So putting and around the green didn't really matter. Off the tee was the big one. And then tee to green. So if you have positive stats, that was another good one. But again, I don't know how fair it is to compare all the strokes gained stats, because really that AM PM split was just, it was so devastating for those AM PM golfers that it's unfair. It really is. I'm not going to look at the rest of the stats. I don't think it's fair to actually go by those. So I think I am going to leave it there. I don't have anything else to talk about when it comes to looking at all the stats. Bucket system was 100% this week, like I said before, so obviously that worked out in our favor. Had we gone 100%, actually, I keep saying that, but I did. I did go 100% on all, just the course history 2s and the recent form 4s. So those first two buckets, out of these two right here, out of this one and out of this one, recent form 4, course history 2, I did go 100% with those. And I mean, I proved that to you looking at the optimizer. When we look at this column here, this is me putting in the conditionals for, the minimum amount of times that I want this bucket chose. So this is basically saying I want the optimizer to select at least one golfer from this bucket, one golfer from that bucket. So those two I went with. That worked out, but the rest of them I didn't go with. How I should have done this is take a look at each one of these buckets up here. Course history 2, course history 1, recent form 4, 2, and 3. So I should have went with like course history 1, put 1 there, come down to recent form 4, and actually just put 1s in all of these. I want to see if the optimizer will select a decent lineup. I'm going to have to get rid of some of these Ys. I think that's about it. Let me zoom out just a little bit. There we go. 49,000 minimum salary. You guys can see that on the screen. I'll go ahead and delete all my lineups so the optimizer has no idea who to select. And let's just say we want to play Rory. He's our number one guy that we want to make sure we're selecting. If I run this optimizer, let's see what it spits out. So we went with Webb. Let's go ahead and say no to Webb, since we knew he withdrew, and go from there. I bet you still it selects Rory Sabatini, which isn't going to work out. But it still fits our bucket scenarios, all of our bucket confirmations here. One guy out of recent form 1, 2, 3, and 4. One guy out of course history 1 and course history 2. So I mean it all played out well. Strokes gained, it picked 2 guys here. What if I say we want at least 3 strokes gained ones? Let's see what that spits out. Still don't get there. Rory, Patrick Reed, that's great. Sung Jae, Stuart Sink, Matt Jones, Richie Wierenski. I'll go ahead and save it just to get those golfers out of the way. Can we get there again? Nope. So far, not working out. We'll run another one. There we go. Victor, but now we have English, Henley, Griffin, Mickelson. That's not terrible. Yeah, we're not getting there. So that's lineup 4. Still can't get an optimal lineup. Most of those guys. Now we get Tony Finau. Abram Answer shows up in our 5th one. We still haven't seen Keith Mitchell. I mean, Gooch I like. Wise. So Wise, Answer, and Rory. Not terrible. I guess if I were to run this a bunch of times and put everyone's ownership to like 20%, maybe I get on some of these guys. There's Keith Mitchell. So on lineup 6, Keith Mitchell shows up. So does Victor Hovland. Who knows? I think I'm going to do that next time. Put all of my buckets in here. Put strict buckets in. Put everyone's ownership to like 20, 30% and see how many different lineups I can get with certain golfers. Again, this week was difficult because Webb withdrew after lineup lock happened. At least that's what DraftKings gave us, or the PGA Tour gave us. So we couldn't make any of those changes. That's a bummer, right? We're not getting around that. We're gonna lose how many lineups that we ended up choosing, to create. So unfortunately, that's just how it goes. Yeah. From there, though, I'm gonna leave it there. 50 minutes in, that's pretty decent. I always want to make these a little bit shorter than I typically do. Never quite get around to that, but here we are. Let me know how you feel about stuff. Oh, by the way, I don't have anything to share when it comes to the website. There's nothing built. I was going to show you the website, but it's in work. It's in progress. So hopefully we get to it soon. Again, my target is to get it out before the PGA Championship, at least in a way that I can create articles with it. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share. Hopefully you guys did well. Let me know in the comment section. Did you follow any of the buckets? If so, which were your successful plays? Which ones were your not so successful plays? But I am very curious as to see how many of you guys actually follow bucket system and how many of you don't. But yeah, let me know. Other than that, just want to thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you for the AT&T Byron Nelson preview tomorrow. All right, see you guys. Bye.